Hello, everyone. So this is Marketing Careers Uncovered. And today I'm Sally and we're switching the tables a little bit. So this time last year, Dave did interview me and I was the first interviewee on the podcast. And now we thought it'd be a really good idea for me to interview Dave to learn more about his career journey and get some wisdom from him in terms of what he's learned over the past year. So, hey, Dave, how's it going?
Very good, thank you. This is a very bizarre moment to be standing in the other seat. So no pressure to get this all right. But really glad to have you back, and I can't believe it's been a year or so already. Actually,
yeah, it's amazing. I can't believe it. It feels like about a month ago for me. But yeah, you've met loads of interesting people and lots of people from across the world, which is amazing. So yeah, I thought it'd be really good to start off by just talking a little bit about what gave you the idea to start the podcast.
So, probably about a couple of years or so ago, I was hiring a couple of different marketing positions, and as you can imagine, loads and loads of different candidates. I probably interviewed about 40 or so people, and it really struck me actually the just how different each candidate was in terms of understanding and exposure to different aspects of marketing, having very different experience, and some people being far less developed than others are, but
yes,
just by virtue of coming from different organizations with their differing viewpoints of what marketing is. So I'd had an idea rattling around in my head for a little while to do something which really brought some of those different perspectives to life. And you can actually blame Carol Vorderman for giving me the kick up the backside. She was. I remember I was actually cycling past Buckingham Palace in London, listening to her on one of James O'Brien's podcasts, and something she said really stuck with me, which was actually the hardest part of anything is starting.
Yes.
Once you've started, then you can build that momentum and keep going, keep improving, and grow. So I just got down to the bottom of the Mel when she'd finished that little bit of insight. I went, what's stopping me? So I remember I raced along to LinkedIn, hastily cobbled together something which would say, hey, if I did this, would people be interested? The answer was yes, and here we are a year later.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's a great story. I do think sometimes we aim for perfection, or we try to wait for this like perfect, memorable moment, and unfortunately it isn't always, that kind of special. You just need to crack on and kind of go for it, and
just get on
improve.
with it.
Yeah, and as you go, you kind of see how it goes and get better. So yeah, it's great that you started and you've got a whole library of content already, which is incredible.
Yeah, so, I'm still here.
Yeah, you're still going, and you've got all your other life, stuff to keep you going as well. So fitting it in alongside everything else is brilliant. So yeah, as we're talking about your other sides of Dave, we thought it'd be really good just to learn a little bit about your career as well. So can you tell us a little bit about the role you have now, and just looking at like your broader career, what you've learned and that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. So I don't need to really introduce myself because everyone knows I'm Dave. And alongside this podcast, I've actually got a day job. I'm senior marketing manager at a fund administration business called Acorion. I also, because I'm still not busy enough, I actually have I run a very small marketing practice, which is me under my own banner, supporting clients across different aspects of marketing and sales. So whether that be looking at CRM, messaging, positioning, leveraging or automation. And I've worked with businesses like health and beauty, dentistry, legal firms, you name it. I've done some work at some point in loads and loads of different types of businesses. But I guess really over the years, as I've developed across different roles and sectors, where I've been focusing and building towards is building and leading really commercially aware marketing teams. And what I mean by that is marketing teams that understand what we're there to do from a revenue perspective, being really clued into the realities of what a successful business looks and feels like, and how a professional marketing function can play a role in that. So really trying to get that balance right between the long-term brand building aspects and actually the short-term sales drivers, which is getting that right. It's often easier said than done, but that's where real success for me in terms of marketing lies.
Yes, definitely. I imagine it is a challenge, a continuous challenge to make sure everyone kind of works together collaboratively. But yeah, for true success, you want all those units and all those people to be collaborative and kind of work from the same sheet, as they say. That's great, thank you. So in terms of your like current role, in terms of what you're doing day to day, could you give us a kind of a brief overview of like a day in the life of Dave? What happens?
Gosh, day in the life of a marketer is always difficult. I think one of the things I always quite enjoy about this space is that actually each day isn't the same. So if I try to give you a little bit of a flavour, so Akora itself is quite a large business with lots of different service lines are called, and I principally support an area called regulatory, legal, and compliance, and we have a brand called Oval Newgate, which is essentially a consulting business of the group that does the really sexy stuff of supporting regulated financial services firms, which I swear is far more interesting than I've just made it.
Regulated is a word that can never sound interesting, I don't think. But yeah, I believe
we make it sexy somehow. That's my job.
Well done.
but essentially, if you're a consumer credit firm in the UK, then you fall under the auspices of the FCA, or if you're a investment advisor in the US, the SEC, and some of the pieces coming out of the regulators are really starting to enter the public realm. So many of you might have heard of something called the Consumer Duty in the UK, which loads of firms are having to start to wrestle there. But when you take that slice of the broader business, actually practically that's segmented into loads of different practice groups.
Yes.
So in total, I have around sort of 7 or so at the very least senior stakeholders to deal with when pulling together marketing plans for the year, what people's commercial priorities are, what's the sales gap that they need to close in order to fill the pipeline and build a successful business. So some of that commercial awareness that I mentioned there, it's no good to go, well, we'll run some fluffy campaigns around this, and this. Actually, if it ultimately doesn't help my colleagues build their pipeline, close revenue, they ain't gonna care.
Yeah.
So
and that's great that you're working so closely with sales, because a lot of companies, they're quite kind of abstract from each other, or quite, I don't know, in rival. But to work so collaboratively and so together is really positive. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that credibility is really important to me as well.
Yes.
It's if you're going to be a respected marketer in your own right, then you have to be well connected and really, really close to the business. Actually, cause we might set a direction of travel at the start of the year, but actually having those regular touch points to go, well, are you still on track to meet your commercial objectives? If you are, marvelous. Let's carry on as we are. But if not, then we very quickly need to course correct. Well, actually, this part of the business needs a little bit more support than this one here. So it's a constant balancing act of running activity, reviewing, refreshing, and revisiting, and not just being a slave to a plan and going, well, it's on the spreadsheet and we said we're going to do this thing in February. If nobody cares anymore, if the moment's gone, then you know what? You change your plans.
Yes, and I guess you have to speak to, make sure you've got like the sector in mind and making sure that you're kind of aware of what's happening outside the company as well. So keeping informed internally is really important.
Yeah, and I think going back to the sort of the day or week in the life. I think the key word here is variety.
Yes.
Yeah. So one day I can be discussing an idea for an upcoming event, how we're going to target some new sectors, or build and develop existing relationships. Yes. We could then be cooking up an idea for a campaign to take advantage of. The regulator is bringing something in new. What does that mean for our clients? What does that mean for us commercially? Or it could even be at the complete other end of the scale, scooping together all of the different activities we've run, and ultimately going, well, actually, what opportunities does this give salespeople from a business development perspective? So you kind of end up involved at all ends of the sales cycle in this in this sort of wonderful merry-go-round. And personally, I always have, and I've really, really recognised this probably in the last sort of 5 years ago. I really, really struggle with a sort of monotonous, predictable routine. Yes. So actually, a career in marketing has been a really, really good outlet for me to sort of scratch that variety itch.
Yes, that's brilliant. And actually being able to plan ahead is brilliant, but also to have that element of spontaneity within the plan is really cool, and to be able to react as and when is brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, we live in an uncertain world. That can't be over-egged enough. Particularly, if you look at the last sort of 5 years and the election cycles, it's been it's an absolute wild ride.
Yes, absolutely. So I think being ready for the unknown is a really good tool to have as a marketer. And also that helps you personally, I guess, to create that exciting roller coaster and to escape the monotonous routine, which is really good. And do you find that having the podcast helps as well to add that variety in terms of your day-to-day?
Absolutely. I think it's just having a variety of different perspectives. So I've spoken to people who have, like yourself, who've taken the plunge and started your own business. I've had people who've had careers over in the US and moved back. Dealt with crisis communications in the NHS during COVID, experiences I would have never have had, and actually understanding and hearing how people have fundamentally approached some of that. I wouldn't get that, and I'm always really conscious and pretty quite worried about becoming institutionalized in any firm that I work in. You can drink your own BS to an extent, and after a few years, you start to lose that you start to lose that edge. Well, I think you're really at risk of. So having this has been personally for me a real benefit. But actually, and hopefully, and from feedback I've received elsewhere, actually, other people have also found that that really helpful too.
Yeah, I think that the institutionalized point is really important, and I think even switching kind of jobs or switching your career slightly, you can still become like echo chambered to like one way of thinking. For example, I feel like I've worked with all left orientated organisations my whole life, and whilst that might be my way of thinking and my values, it's important to know about other people's ways and to understand the wider world, whether that's from a political point of view or even just from a values point of view.
And actually, if you look at my if you were to look at my CV and put the size of the firm next to them, you'll see that I've kind of gone from smaller, larger, smaller, larger, smaller, larger. And what I've been doing there, sort of semi-consciously, is, there are wonderful benefits to working for smaller firms.
Yes.
You really get your hands dirty. You're close to absolutely everything. But then, there are also benefits to working in larger firms as well, where maybe you can afford a little more time to think a little bit slower, still act quite quickly, but to afford yourself a little more capacity to think a little bit more strategically, or develop those skills. So I've found that moving between different, not even just different sectors, but even different sizes of firms, has been really, really beneficial for me and the way I learn to grow and develop.
That's really cool. And actually being conscious of that is quite interesting. So maybe our next question is kind of leaning into that. So generally speaking, marketing, is this something you've always wanted to do? Do you think this is something maybe you didn't know what it was when you were little, but generally as a kind of creative and analytical kind of space, is this something you'd always wanted to do?
If you had asked me, when I was at school, I probably wouldn't have consciously gone, I want to be a marketer. It just, that wasn't particularly there. But I do remember actually, going back to school, actually, when I started my business studies GCSE.
Yes.
We're back around 2003, 2004, I think. This is cue everyone frantically figuring out how old I am. I'm not old, but I'm not young either.
We can work it out quite well because it's 2024. But go for it. I'm sure.
You could do some. You could do some simple. You can all do some simple maths in your own time. But I had some really, really interesting teachers there, and actually there was something about seeing and understanding how businesses started, grew. I started to take an interest in the business pages of the newspaper. Christ, what GCSE student does that? But and it was around the time when The Apprentice was actually a half decent TV show. Not the absolute caricature of knobheads that you see now, but it was actually, I'd say, competent people capable of running their running businesses and being quite entrepreneurial. And I was really interested in that. Let's call it a sense of ambition, building things, not just going along and doing a job and, going into that monotonous cycle.
Yeah. And so can you think of like a moment that maybe was like a catalyst for this kind of thinking, or maybe made you quite excited?
So I'm going through this business studies GCSE, right? And I'm thinking, this is quite interesting. But when it all started to, let's call it that light bulb moment, it was during sixth form, actually. And I took part in this project called, and I Googled it recently because I was, thinking about this conversation we're having. It was called Young Enterprise. And essentially, it's still going today. But when I was doing it, essentially, a group of students across the country would set up and run their own businesses with the added incentive of any profits we made were ours to keep. So, the capitalistic demon inside of me was quite happy at that prospect, and absolutely just loved the process.
That's a really good
I
incentive
remember,
as well, isn't it? Like a tangible result that you can actually achieve, and yeah, a
yeah,
personal
yeah,
incentive as well.
you don't just get a pat on the back here. It's look, we weren't going to be millionaires anytime soon and swanning off into the sunset. But I really remember it quite vividly, and actually, I even remember the business name to this day. We called it New UK Innovations, which was actually just a great excuse for a bunch of hormonal sixth formers to abbreviate and call the business Nookie.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, not much has changed with me over the years. I still enjoy moments like that. But more interestingly, the proposition we came up with, I thought at the time was really really good. So we came up with this idea of publishing a calendar, right? Not terribly exciting on its own, but we charted out all of these different school fairs. So we have this wonderful idea of, well, actually, let's get all the kids around all these local schools to submit artwork which can go into the calendar, and then when we rock up to all these school fates, how on earth could parents possibly not purchase a calendar with their kids' artwork included in there? Do you really love your kids if you haven't bought this
Wow.
calendar? So
Exactly.
we sold quite a few of these, and we did really well. We made a bit of money. Can't really remember how much. It was enough by the time we split it across 8 or so people to have a half decent night out. We actually placed second regionally.
That's
Because it was
amazing.
like this. It was like this sort of Game of Thrones championships,
I love
where
it.
battle royale. So we didn't win big. We didn't come away from this with a big trophy, but I was definitely bitten by some sort of bug. And actually, it was the moment where I was mulling over what degree to do where, and went, okay, business and marketing. That's what I'm going to pop down.
I love that. And what a great kind of real life scenario to get your teeth into rather than just that abstract, kind of hypothetical story. You actually were able to live out and create a real life story. That's brilliant. It's really cool.
It's one thing to read a business case study of a business decided to do X and Y. Actually, the reality of when you get 8 people in a room and they all have, shock horror, opinions of their own,
Yes, of course. Yeah.
perspectives that don't quite match mine. Well, actually, I don't think we should do this. What about this? Even just the process of understanding that, well, not everyone thinks like
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
I think my ideas are the best, but so does everyone else. And how do you actually tangibly navigate through that? So forget the actual business bit. Just learning that alone was absolutely invaluable.
Gold dust. Yeah. Yeah. I think the kind of the art of communication and learning to take constructive feedback. If you learn that really early on in your career, I think that kind of shows, it shows really well. You can kind of tell that in terms of junior members of staff. If you've learned to communicate well, it's a really good asset. So, yeah, that's a great way to start your career and start your learning career as well. So, yeah, let's look at like some lessons you've learned across your time in marketing. So from that first step to now, what would you say are maybe some of the biggest lessons you've learned throughout your career?
Geez, how long have you got? There's loads. There's loads, really. The ones that really stick out to me, and actually, interestingly, over the last year of doing this podcast, I've heard some similar things too. So, thing number one is this. There's the perennial debate around do you become a broad generalist or do you specialize? And I think I've come down the line of thinking that actually breadth of experience and expertise is really, really important. So, whilst I'm not going to poo-poo on specialisms, because really deep PPC specialists, for example, or UX or other bits and pieces. Yeah, they're really, really important to delivering on a marketing plan, right? But actually, even when I've looked at and spoken to people who specialize in those areas, the people who've really been able to take things to another level are those who've been able to actually poke the head out of the hole, look across, and understand the broader marketing mix and channel set and all these pieces. So it's not just heads down moment. I'm going to run some really amazing PPC ads. It's people that understand. Well, actually, how does that effectively hand over to
Yes, yeah.
to sales? How do I make sure that the messaging is consistent with any other campaign assets? How do I avoid cannibalizing if we've got different parts of the business doing similar things or other group companies? There's loads there. And actually, I started my career really firmly entrenched in what we call digital marketing. So I think by no grand design, it was just a bit of a product of the time, really. So I graduated around 2010, where the wonderful wand of austerity was about to be waved over everything. But equally, this whole digital marketing stuff was a bit of a novelty still for a lot of businesses. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember I started uni in 2006, and I remember being sat in a pub setting up a Facebook account because there's this cool new thing that everyone's on. The prospect of my mum and my nan and other people being on that was just not even it. It just wasn't. It
Yeah,
wasn't
because at the
there
beginning
at
you had
all.
to be a uni student, didn't you? I think you had to have a university email address at the very, very beginning.
Yeah, and I think I joined at the point in time which started to open up
Yes.
a little bit wider, but it was still very much, for the
Mm.
kids. Which I can't believe I've just even said that phrase out loud. But the whole time there, it really played into my advantage. Again, because what were firms and businesses really looking for? These people called digital natives who kind of intrinsically got this stuff, and so that really helped me get my foot in the door and develop some good skills and relationships. Um, but it wasn't. I didn't really appreciate depth until I joined a consulting firm. Maybe sort of 6 or 7 or so years or so ago now, and I joined there as a digital marketing specialist again because I kind of knew my way around a lot of this stuff. And I had a boss. I'm going to name him. I'm going to name check him here, Robin Harrison, and he would annoy me to no end by he would. You'd always get me involved in all these other bits and pieces, outside of the day job. Things like PR, new product development, sales campaigns, pitches, even really build me out to clients a couple of times to do some projects. So things like doing some market research analysis of the children's waterproof market. Thinking, oh, for Christ's sake, Robin, I've got a to-do list, the size of my arm here, just in my day job. Bugger off, please. What are you doing? What are you doing getting me involved in some of this stuff? So I kept getting pulled away from what I deemed to be core responsibilities. But actually, what was happening was I was starting to think a little bit more broader outside of the sort of tunnel I could have lived in. Yeah, and being able to pull myself out of the weeds, see that bigger picture, and actually even looking at things like that children's waterproof market project. I probably for the first time, actually, I really appreciated the value of good quality market research, reading the market, stopping, slowing down, taking a look, and actually just how that can practically then aid a new product development, marketing plans, and strategies. And yeah, these are similar stories that I've heard from people as well. So
Yeah.
even those specialists who've gotten involved in some bits and pieces, they've still retained that specialism. I think it's T-shaped marketers. I think is the technical term. If anyone wants to go and Google that, but it's something where I really thought, okay, take every opportunity you can to step outside of what you might think is your role and your comfort zone. Look around you. Poke your fingers in a few in a few pies, and you might be quite surprised to see what you learn and where that can take you.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And also understanding how other teams and the bigger picture works will hopefully help you become more strategic and think about, the bigger picture in terms of your organisation rather than just your team and just your individual role. That's all really important.
Yeah, and there's that overused example of the cleaner at the NASA headquarters going, what are you here to do? Am I sweeping the floor, or am I putting a man on the moon? But it's that ability to be able to articulate actually your role in the bigger picture, and that's the stuff where when you start to engage with more senior colleagues who are thinking much bigger and broader, then being able to articulate some of those things can really help you build that. Going back to credibility again, but it's really important.
Yes, that's brilliant. That's really cool. Thank you. That's really interesting to hear about all your kind of early insights and how you learn about things, and also how you got excited for future roles and understanding
You've
the
got to be
bigger.
excited. I think if it doesn't excite you, then you know what? Think twice about what you're doing,
Yes,
because you spend so much time at work and working. So if it doesn't excite you, then life's too short.
absolutely. Yes, and even challenging yourself as well. So maybe you're not excited in a traditional sense, but you're challenged and you're improving yourself and bettering yourself is also another way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So,
So thanks, Robin. I didn't appreciate you at the time, but I certainly do now.
so in terms of getting involved with lots of different things, we could always talk about putting ourselves in lots of situations and getting involved, but how do we actually think about that, in the wider sense? So how do you balance that alongside actually performing in your role and in your career?
Another interesting thing from all the conversations I've had over the past year, when I've got to the nub of actually, what's helped people move from one role to another to take those steps up. I don't think no, actually, definitely nobody went. Dave, do you know what it's about? It's about working more hours. It's about just
Yes,
burn yourself out. Just keep adding things to the list. It's that wasn't and isn't the answer. And it's something I started to notice too as I was starting to come up from sort of junior to more senior exec roles into into management. It was being able to really figure out how to rebalance and reprioritize
yeah,
some of the time. And going back to my sort of yo-yoing between different sizes and shapes of firm, I was probably really able to put some of this thinking into practice when I started working for a bit of a larger larger firm. So what I mean by this is, so if you've got a job description, most people employed for a firm do, pull it out, open it up, and you'll see a whole list of things that you're expected to do as part of your role. But not all of them are equal. Not all of them are equal in terms of size or importance or impact. So what I started to do when I was working for a larger publishing firm, there was this opportunity to start getting involved in a project to essentially embed broader marketing best practice throughout a lot of different sectoral teams. So this was, how do we become more digitally focused? Bring some of that into the campaign, so it becomes an intrinsic part of how a business does things. So I was like, oh, that's really, really interesting, because it's, personally, it's higher order value work. It's not just me shuffling things around, planning documents and spreadsheets and putting, email campaigns live and stuff. So it was a great opportunity to be more visible in the organisation, but also actually to be known for something. I find the phrase personal brand a little bit wanky sometimes, but that's the sort of essence of this. When someone goes, Dave Hayward, what do they associate me with? So it was a really fab opportunity for something much, much larger than my current remit. So what I started to do was actually, I started to quietly not do things or do less of things that were in my job description that really didn't bring that much to the party. So I started to pick out things like constant, incessant reporting, updating documentation for things frequently. You'll kind of know it when you see it, some of the low impact stuff, and actually you'll be really surprised, or maybe not so surprised, how few people really care if a weekly report ends up coming out bi-weekly.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm not sure I always got it right, but peeling back on some of those really low value items, it gave me a bit of time and headspace to start taking some of that step up, and the opportunity to stretch some of those skills. And it all came to fruition for me when I actually got an opportunity to leave the firm and take a step from being a sort of senior exec into managing people and a marketing function. And I found that all of a sudden I was able to speak far more confidently about the future value that I could bring. Because what I really, really noticed and picked up on, those who were moving onwards and upwards, actually what people really cared about was, what can you do and bring to the party tomorrow, not necessarily what I did today or yesterday.
Yeah, that's great. I think, always thinking one step ahead as much as you can, but also, thinking about what you've done today is really important. But both at the same time is, very key. That's great. Thank you, Dave. So thinking about some of the roles you've had in smaller companies, what would you say, just to give advice back to the audience, and I've been here as well in my career. So say you're a solo marketer in a small company, or even a freelancer working in a small company. Where can you start to build that broader knowledge when you've not got a whole marketing team around you?
Yeah, I think you can sometimes overthink and overcomplicate some of this stuff. It's the things that you would expect me to say. Going to external events and meetups, signing up for blogs and publications, finding people, either inside or outside your organization. They don't have to always be marketers, but people who you can sit down with, discuss your approaches and thought processes and be challenged by. And I think that challenge is really, really important.
Yes.
Yeah. I think if I spent the next month sitting down with people being told, "Oh, Dave, you're absolutely brilliant, wonderful, best marketer ever," you know what? It would feel quite nice. I could probably pin some stuff up on my fridge, tell my mum. But where do you go? Where do you go and where do you go with that? What do you do with that? Some of the best, we'll call them mentor figures, have been people who've asked really, really tough conversations or gone, well, why should anyone care about that? Made me really think and defend a position. But one thing one thing I did learn, and it was quite a harsh lesson, was actually making sure you're in a position and you're ready for some of those mentoring conversations. So I've got a story to tell
Go for it, Dave.
on this one. It's slightly embarrassing on my part, but let's go there anyway. So I was once upon a time set up to have one of the senior marketing directors at Ted Baker as a career mentor, which is pretty cool, right? I mean, most people
That's
would
quite cool.
bite their arms off for that opportunity, and it really was a great opportunity. So this was a little while back where Ted Baker as a brand was really in its prime, super duper opportunity. Except I wasn't quite ready. Definitely. I took it for granted. It had been set up for me, and I'd go and meet so and so. I didn't really think or I didn't think that I needed to prepare and think about what I wanted to get out of it. And went there, had a bit of a chat. I thought it went okay. The other guy thought it went absolutely terribly, and it actually still stings a little bit. Actually, declined to mentor me in the end. I didn't think that was actually a possible outcome. I was like, hold on, he can actually go, no, thank you. It just hadn't occurred to me that could actually be a possible thing. So I think people can quite glibly bang on about, oh yeah, go and get mentored. It'll be absolutely brilliant. I think, there's a few prerequisites for that. Make sure you're actually ready to receive whatever it is someone is willing to give, and you don't necessarily need to have a plan, but go in armed with a sense of direction you want to go in. I think if you can't really articulate that, then perhaps mentoring at that point isn't going to be that much value, and ultimately waste yours and someone else's time.
Yes.
I mean, I don't mind admitting that I was and still am to an extent just utterly embarrassed by that rejection. So much so that I think it's the only time in my life I felt compelled to write a handwritten apology, a proper old school letter here, apologising for wasting his time. I knew I'd absolutely just ruined any opportunity there, but once I'd sort of licked my wounds and realised, this was completely my fault. I sat down and wrote and posted a handwritten apology.
That's a very admirable moment. I think it's really hard sometimes. You get given opportunities and sometimes you don't realise the extent or the magnitude of the opportunity until afterwards or when you're in the moment. And maybe you weren't ready for it and it wasn't really the right time. But I think, the lesson there is about being as prepared as you can and thinking through things and being intentional in terms of what you're doing, because everyone's time is valuable. And, maybe someone else could have had that opportunity. So it's not always, for you, maybe you can pass it on to a colleague. But thinking about why you need it and why that would be beneficial.
Yeah, I didn't like the fact that I looked like an idiot. I made myself look like an idiot in the in the process. So the pain has dulled, but the scar is the scar is still there.
Yes, and there's a lesson to be learned, I think, for everyone there as well. Like knowing why you're meeting someone and not just, we can all have a nice little chat, but what's the actual purpose of the conversation and what are you both going to get out of it so that it's mutually beneficial. So in terms of other lessons you've learned, so that sounds like a hard lesson, but a really valid one. Have you got another example of a hard lesson that you've had to learn along the way?
I've got yes is the answer. Let's go back to I think I mentioned it very briefly. I had an opportunity to move from a senior exec to a management role, and I've not really talked through this with anyone at any length before, but it was actually a bit of a slow disaster.
Okay, yeah, we're ready.
yeah. Strap yourself in. I'd gone from being a senior marketing exec, part of a larger team, to right, you're going to own and run this, run a small marketing function. And I was at first I was a little bit surprised, but I got it actually. I thought it was a little bit of a moonshot on my part. So when I got it, I thought, Jesus, I've won the lottery here. It was everything. A big jump up in responsibility, salary as well. It was all wonderful things. Yeah, I'd met with the CEO and CFO. We'd had a few conversations about some of the challenges the organisation faced, how marketing needed to evolve, and we'd had loads of really good conversations there. And I like to think of myself as a pretty likable guy as well. So we all got on quite well. Now, in most cases, when you're making that jump from being let's simplify it and call it, from being an order taker to an order giver, no one really spells out how an effective functional leader really needs to act. And there's a few things where, in retrospect, it was probably a bit of a masterclass on how to really cock it up, frankly.
So what not to do? What not to do?
Yeah. So what I'm about to tell you, do none of that, and you'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah, learn from Dave's mistakes. It's a good lesson.
Yes. Because no one gets all this stuff right. But I've thought about it and boiled it down to a few things. So, thing number one, I kind of came at it from this perspective of, I had all the answers. Yeah, I remember embarrassingly meeting some of my other department peers, sort of a few weeks in, and proudly proclaiming that, because I'd had a couple of conversations with the CEO and CFO. I know exactly what we needed to do, and nice and easy. Proper cringeworthy now, looking back, and I was just barreling forward on things that I thought was important, based on probably an hour or so of conversation with two senior stakeholders who weren't actually that close to things. I didn't take any time to stop and think and understand. Okay, where am I? How does this all work? What do people care about? What's working well? What isn't? I do have to cut myself a little bit of slack when I sort of count the clock back and realise, at that point in time, I was 26, right?
Yes.
And I think at the time, really eager to show that, right, you know what, I can roll my sleeves up, I can get things done, and I can move quickly. I think I was trying a little bit too hard to prove myself, and ultimately not thinking about, yes, I can get things done, but are they going to be the right things? So that's cock up number one. Don't do that. The second thing, and this took me a little while to get my head around, but I think I ultimately had a little bit of a warped view of what leadership was and how people in leadership roles should act and behave. So I'd come to have this perspective that people at the top had to know everything and be able to do everything. They had to be the best at absolutely everything. And this was an era where we didn't have people bearing all on social media. All of these different coaches offering perspectives. You kind of had to take a view on what you saw out in the wild, and it's kind of like an iceberg. You've got someone in a leadership role. There's the visible stuff that you see, but there's actually all of the work underneath, so the time and effort behind the scenes to pull everyone in the same direction, to motivate, to understand that. Do you know what? It's cool to not have all the answers, and that the role is actually to bring those people together who can bring us to find a solution to a challenge or opportunity. But because I kind of got this view that I've got to sit at the top of the mountain and know everything and go here, like some sort of army general, I actually slowly over time ended up isolating myself. Both from my team and from my peers, and it was a very slow process, and it wasn't until the final sort of weeks when I realised, oh God, how did I get over here?
Yeah, it must be hard I guess you sometimes have to go through something to learn it, and if you've had different leadership in your past careers or past jobs, you haven't necessarily had good role models to be inspired by. It can be, it's hard to kind of live that out and suddenly be in the deep end.
Yeah, absolutely. But but one other thing which I was definitely, I was accountable to no one but myself for this. A little or a lot of arrogance had crept into my thinking. I don't mind admitting that. I was 26, had made a huge, quite impressive leap. I thought I was doing brilliantly. Believed my own hype, and I definitely lost at that moment just a bit of that humility and recognition that you're only as good as the last thing that people remember and recall from you. So it was all quite a sort of heady mix of things, and I stuck it out for about 2.5 years, but I just couldn't sustain it any longer, and I spent a good year or so afterwards really, really licking my wounds. I did wonder at points, actually, am I a bit of a crap marketer here? Have I reached my limit? Is this have I peaked now? I'd never fallen short of my own expectations like that before, ever. And it really took me a good while to untangle the good from the bad and figure out that actually, there was loads I could have done better, and let's take that forward. But also recognizing that it wasn't actually all terrible. My team did some wonderful work in bringing a very, very old school marketing function into the 21st century, thinking more externally about products, services, and markets, rather than just being a comms vehicle or flyer creators. But I also have to recognise, did I really bring the team along for the ride? Not really. Yes, I probably wasn't as effective as I could have been. But when I've had to sit down and ask myself, the ultimate question, go, well, actually, do I regret that, or would I change anything? I do have to say no.
Okay.
It was one of the most hardest but formative learning experiences I think I've ever had. Some proper harsh lessons. But coming out of that and bringing some of those learnings forward, actually, as I've moved into other roles in other businesses, I'm a far better manager, far better leader, mentor, and just a more rounded, sensible marketer as a result.
That's a great story and really, really honest, Dave. Thank you so much for sharing. I think a big kind of takeaway from that, me just listening to you, is about, I guess, all of us being a bit more self-aware and knowing that we can't be perfect, but also being open to asking people's opinions and knowing that you don't all have the answers. And I think even the most experienced and talented people don't have all the answers. And I think that's where you use your colleagues and your support functions to help fill those gaps and to, give you the actual support that you need, because one person can only do one thing. Would you agree with that, Dave?
I'd absolutely agree. Even if you're in a small business environment, I've seen people pop up on places like Reddit and ask for opinions and get some really, really good, honest feedback and perspectives. You can't do everything, and actually, you should feel comfortable pushing back on your firm as well. I think a lot of firms still try to cram about sort of 4 or 5 different roles into one.
Yes,
and I think if we collectively push back against that a little bit and go, sometimes we do need to get someone external for this particular project. Actually, no, I don't know much about that. I can go and find out, but I'm not going to pretend that that I know everything inside out. I think it's something that comes. It's definitely come with me with age, where you start to give less fucks. I couldn't really find a non-sweary way of articulating that quite so succinctly, but that's the principle of just being comfortable with the unknown.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And also knowing that you can ask for help and it's not weak to ask for help. And actually, I think, I don't know, when I've seen other people ask for help or people in leadership positions say, oh, I actually don't know the answer, I found that to be really relatable and really heartwarming in a way. And it actually makes me feel more human. So I think knowing that people will always feel the same as you is also really good, reassuring fact in terms of.
But it's still surprisingly rare though.
So some great lessons there, Dave, and thank you so much for being so honest and open. Some of those harsh lessons, might have been a bit painful to relay, but we appreciate you opening up and being really honest about some of the things that have happened. So coming to close and coming to the end, because we could talk all day, but we need to remember we've only got a certain amount of time. So in terms
we've got
of
lives to go back to.
Yes, and there's lots to talk about, but let's try and think about closing up. So in terms of what's next for your career, so you've done loads of great things, and you're at a really good point in your career now where you've got your own thing, and then you've got your day job, and then you've also got the podcast. Have you got anything you've got planned on the horizon in terms of what's next, or anything on your bucket list that you'd like to talk about?
So I'm still always really eager to keep doing new things. realised and recognised now that I'm not the kind of person who can just do the same thing day in, day out. So, you probably won't find me sticking in a role for extended periods of time unless there are loads of new challenges and things to explore. And I'm comfortable with that as well. And I'm always open and honest with people about that, going, well, I'm here as long as I can continue to add some value or be challenged and develop to myself. I do have an itch to scratch with doing I'd quite like to do a mini MBA.
Yes.
I've seen some of the Marketing Week stuff that's really quite interesting. I think, again, quite a good avenue to stretch your grey matter a bit and pick up some new skills, particularly getting more involved in things like pricing and other more broader elements of the marketing mix. But you can also expect this podcast to carry on for a while as well. I think I'm at my most excited where I'm sort of hearing different viewpoints. Even arguing the toss a bit with people and having those worldviews challenged, because consensus, I think, is just a bit boring.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Yeah, and I think it's really nice to see someone have lots of extracurricular activities away from their job. And I think to become as well-rounded as possible, it is always good to look externally and to speak to as many people as you can outside your kind of inner circle. I think that's always a good thing. Yes, amazing. So, final thoughts. We've covered a lot here and you have given loads of advice. But if you could give one piece of advice to the marketers of tomorrow, what would it be?
Ooh, just one then.
Yeah, just one.
And we've sort of meandered around some of this, but I'll distill it down into one little one little nugget. I used to think to be respected and valued that I had to know all the answers and know everything right away. Actually, what I've come to understand now is that what's really, really valued and valuable is thoughtfulness, being inquisitive, asking the right questions to help a business get from A to B to C. And you best do that by understanding the market, understanding the business you're in, how they make their money, how they don't, what are the loss leaders, what aren't, what are the different routes to achieving that. Presenting different options and actually doing all that together and collectively with different people, rather than doing what I did, which was charging off into the distance and thinking that I alone do and should know best. Actually, you don't know best. And the sooner you get comfortable and real with that, then the better off you will be.
Yes, maybe there's some comfort in the discomfort, that actually nothing is ever going to be fully, you're not going to ever 100% know everything, but there's some opportunity in that, and that's kind of exciting in a way. And working together as a team, you can move forward and do your best work by being curious and having that appetite to experiment, I think, is really key.
Most definitely.
Really good. I've actually seen recently some job titles advertised as experimentation executive. So companies actually employing people to just test and learn and try things and fail. And I think that's a really interesting curve in terms of how marketing is moving, rather than focusing on all the stuff we've done before that's worked again and again, actually trying stuff and being fresh with ideas. So thank you so much, Dave, for everything and for being so open and vulnerable, and also just being really honest in terms of mistakes you've made and lessons you've learned. I think everyone can really, really take a lot from that. So thank you so much. And I think it's a good reminder to let everyone know that they can subscribe so you can keep up to date with all the forthcoming podcasts and interviews, and share this across social media as much as you can so that more people can learn and hear these great marketing stories. So thank you so much, Dave. And yes, we'll see you all next time.